the tax benefit that comes with cost segregation is different for the single family home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin than it is for the commercial real estate in Austin, Texas. So it's really key to sit down and get a view of what it looks like for you before going out and trying to apply these things.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yonah Weiss. As always, grateful to be here today with Chris McCormack. I am excited to have you on the show. You had me on your podcast a while back, a couple of years ago, and you've been doing it for a while. And Chris is a CPA. He's a tax coach and is crushing it with helping people in the real estate world get their act together when it comes to taxes and real estate. So Grateful to have you, Chris. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Yonah. What an honor it is to be on here. Really appreciate you taking the time, making the space, and no one I'd rather be talking to than Cost Seg King himself.
Wow, I'm honored. I'm sure you could probably pick one or two other people you'd rather be talking to. I won't tell your wife.
Hey,
Don't worry.
Hey, thank you.
No, but seriously, it's amazing. Tell me a little bit about your background, what you were doing, what kind of led you to this field of really focusing on real estate taxes, and just giving a little background for our listeners.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. So as you mentioned, CPA, and that by itself can mean a whole range of different things, right? You have the CPAs that are auditing, which I've been through, started out as an auditor with PwC, one of the top accounting firms in the world. And it can also mean that you're preparing taxes. It could mean that you're planning taxes. It could mean that you're working privately for different companies. But really on my journey, I started in the public world and quickly realized that there were some strategies that these big corporations were using. I specifically looked at financial institutions, life insurance companies, and saw what they were doing. I got a glimpse of the tax side behind those corporate walls and quickly realized that there was some information that was being used by these big companies that some of the entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, regular real estate investors didn't really have. So I did a little more research, felt the call to just kind of go out on my own in entrepreneurship. Originally thought I was just going to do it in real estate investing by itself, but I also noticed that there was a gap between real estate investors, the tax code for real estate investors, and the communication of the tax code to those real estate investors. So where there's a gap, I like to fill it and knew that I had the qualifications to do it. So since then have kind of worked to build this up over the past 2 years. We're Better Books Accounting. We do tax planning and accounting for real estate investors. We focus on those with 3 or more properties. We know that there's a lot of frustration when it comes to the lack of sound tax expertise. I'm sure,
Right.
Yonah, you've seen it quite a bit.
All the
Some
time, every
people
day.
say this works, some people say this doesn't work, and we're just really, for the clients, looking to save them tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, because we know that the investors are really doing a good work in providing housing and a space for people to live. So that's my heart. That's kind of shortened version over the past 4 or 5 years of my life, and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah, 100%. Were you mentioned kind of the idea of getting into real estate as an investor first. Were you able to do that? Did you end up, buying any properties or investing in any deals before or during this course of your journey for yourself?
Right. Yeah. So not quite. I have moved quite a bit from Boston to California to Minnesota. So part of that has been me renting out from various places. I've lived with people who have house hacked. And right now I'm in a season where my wife and I are looking to secure our first house hack in the form of a duplex or quadplex. But yeah, this really started by just how most real estate investors start, is reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, kind of changing your mindset around money and debt. And in that, he talks quite a bit about not only cash flow, but also tax strategy. And so that served quite a bit in allowing me to realize that the knowledge that I have gained as a CPA and studying and applying for this license is not just knowledge to everyone. Like it is hidden. And so we're working to reveal some of those hidden tricks.
100%. I would say, I'm very, very curious about, you mentioned earlier about working with PwC, working for big accounting firms, and picking up some of those things that large corporations and large companies were using that maybe the smaller, without obviously we're not in a paid consultation right now, but if someone were to
Right.
reach out to you and ask you, hey, what are some of those tricks and strategies that, I should be using as a real estate investor that owns, three or more properties?
Yes, definitely. So I mentioned I worked with life insurance companies. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, life insurance, again, is just with anything from in the realm of finance. There's a whole range of what life insurance is, but there are some tax benefits to life insurance. And these insurance companies are also the largest institutions and have the most wealth as far as anybody. Like when the banks get bailed out, people turn to the insurance companies to go and make up some of that difference. So there was
Yeah.
a lot to learn about how they accumulated that wealth, and insurance can be a great way of doing that. But as far as real estate is focused, depreciation, I mean, these companies buy buildings, right? Like McDonald's, it's said that McDonald's portrays themselves as a burger company, but what they really are is a real estate company.
Right.
And you don't have to walk very far around Times Square in New York to realize that they have some of the most valuable pieces of real estate on the planet. So I just started to realize that the value of a building was there. And then in talking and doing some more research, it's because there's a threefold way of building wealth through real estate. Yes, you get the tax benefit. Yes, you get the appreciation. And then, yes, you get the cash flow. So it
Mm-hmm.
checks all the boxes as far as wealth building goes. And most people know about the appreciation. Most people know that it's a hard asset, but they also know about the tax benefit, but it's not clear as to where those tax benefits come in. And that's what we look to do, is bring that clarity to their confusion.
So the life insurance thing is fascinating. I know people, and are you talking about using life insurance for yourself as an investment vehicle, like to, have a sort of whole life? I've heard a lot of different things. There's kind of the infinite banking and the whole life insurance policies and things like that, people pulling out and kind of leveraging those. Is that what you're talking about? Or are there other aspects to that?
Yeah. So obviously, the whole life insurance is the big way to do it. It's a lot of talk in the financial realm, and there's great benefit to it, right? Yeah, there's tax benefits because of the way that the tax code views insurance, right? They say that if you take a payout of insurance, it's not a taxable event. So that's where life insurance, whole life insurance specifically, gives you the benefit. But it's not just life insurance, it's any kind of insurance. So, Yona, if you got in a car wreck later today and you had to file a claim and your car was worth $20,000 and the insurance company came and paid you $20,000, you don't have to pay taxes on that $20,000.
Right.
And the same is true for property insurance. If for some reason a natural disaster came and you got an insurance payout, you don't have to pay taxes on that insurance. So when you get to these bigger corporations, what they do is they set up these insurance agencies, insurance companies, to basically self-insure their properties, and then they can technically take payouts to go and do whatever it is they want to do with these funds. So what you see on the whole life realm can also be displayed out in other areas of insurance. And it is complex, and these entities that they're setting up do have a lot of restrictions and
Mm-hmm.
requirements. So obviously, if you're in that realm, then I would advise you to speak with somebody and don't just go setting up a company and say that it's
Sure.
insurance and taking withdrawals. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's about it.
Okay, but you're actually saying that this is something you can do even as a smaller investor. I mean, you don't need to be like $100 million corporation to be using some of these strategies.
That's where the life insurance comes in, is because, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
anybody who has like an extra $10,000 lying around can use it to its advantage. Obviously, you need to let time do its thing and build up a certain cash value. When you get to like self-insuring, there are requirements. I believe the threshold is like $2 million. You need $2 million in your bucket of insurance for you to be claimed as a insurance company and to meet some of these requirements. And so to go the level of insuring your property through your own company, then it does require quite a bit of cash. But as far as the tax advantages of insurance in general, like the whole life insurance, then yeah, anybody with, I've heard it say 10,000 extra dollars to save, invest, or put away can really see the benefit.
Fascinating. Fascinating. We've had a
Yeah.
couple of people on the show previously talk about, infinite banking, or, there are a lot of different ways to kind of describe a lot of different type of things to do it. But it's really, in the end of the day, it's all related, and the same kind of practices are being used to leverage that money. We even had a presentation on our Wednesday night, or now Wednesday afternoon. It used to be Wednesday night, now Wednesday afternoon meetup, going through this and actually showing the numbers and breaking it down in terms of numbers. And it was just
Right.
because you hear about it and you don't really know what it looks like or what it can look like for an individual, but using time to compound and having obviously investments to reinvest that money, or to use that money to invest in, the arbitrage that's there is just, that's really where you're going to make the money.
Yes. Yes, it is. It's good. And you mentioned too, is like being able to see it for yourself, and everybody's profile is different. And so it's so important to meet with the guys. I mean, Yona, you see it all the time in properties. Everybody's property is different. The tax benefit that comes with cost segregation is different for the single family home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, than it is for the commercial real estate in Austin, Texas. So it's really key to sit down and get a view of what it looks like for you before going out and trying to apply these things.
Now, in moving around, being an entrepreneur, obviously you're running your own company. I'd love to kind of take that angle for a minute, because you spent a couple of years working for large consulting firms, doing that, the W-2, the cubicle type work.
Right. Yep.
How did you know that, the kind of the entrepreneur life was the one for you?
Yeah, great question. And it's changed. I mean, it's funny. I went to a Catholic college, and part of our curriculum was a liberal arts curriculum. And I took a class which was like Introduction to Old Testament Theology and Hebrew Literature. And every day in this class, the professor would ask a question kind of as like an icebreaker. And one of the questions I specifically remember is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And my answer to her, Yona, was in a cubicle, because I'm on the fast track to corporate job, accounting degree, CPA, all this thing. And it was really, I really did have a change of heart over a period of 5 years, where it's like, okay, there's more out there. And I do credit a lot of it to the way I was raised, right? My dad did a time in corporate. He worked at a law firm, worked his way up to partner. But by the time he was, I think, like 40, in his 40s, he transitioned and left and started a firm of his own. So I really got to see what people call the American dream at play in my formidable years. I was about a senior in high school at this time. So that planted seeds. And I think it was just doing research and knowledge, reading things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and other books like Atomic Habits, and different self-development books that really transform the way you think and show you that there is something greater out there. And so the pursuit of that greater thing, and also the level of service, right? I feel more fulfilled by serving the individual property owner with 3 or more properties than I do serving the big JP Morgan, different life insurance companies. And I'm not saying those are the clients that I was working on, but like, you get the idea, like these billion-dollar companies, or somebody out there with 3 kids. I know them, I work with them, and I get to see the fruit take root in their life. So all that together really, really got me on this entrepreneurial path, and it's been a blessing, and it's a great journey to go on.
Good for you. And having that inspiration that you said, had your dad doing that when you're from middle years, it's absolutely kind of mind-changing, life-changing in a lot of ways, because not everyone has that. You don't necessarily, not everyone sees that, where a lot of people are kind of raised, the rich dad, poor dad, the poor dad, just get a job. That's really where a lot of people are raised, especially in high school. You had a different path. Obviously, the schooling you had, even with the liberal arts that were in there, there's so much to learn if you kind of branch out and figure that out, especially when you find a niche in accounting, in real estate accounting specifically. I'm always surprised how few accountants, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I speak with people every single day. And one of the things that I bring up every day, obviously I'm talking about cost segregation. I'm having, calls with clients or potential clients every single day. And one of the questions that comes up is, is there anything else? This seems like a great idea, right? The cost segregation, explain to them, the benefits. the pitfalls, etc. And then they always ask me, is there anything else I should know? And the one thing I always say is, well, make sure that your accountant, understands this and is on board with this, and have a conversation with them. And more times than not, unfortunately, and I'm talking in the thousands, of conversations, people will come back and say, my accountant doesn't know what this is, or doesn't know how to apply this, or especially, we're dealing with short-term rentals and the specific passive activity rules, or when you're dealing with real estate professional status and, a spouse. There are all these intricacies, and I'm not going to get into too many details right now in going into those. But my question, which I'm trying to formulate to you, is: have you seen, why is it that so few accountants out there really do get this? I mean, you're focused on real estate, so obviously you do.
Right. It's a great question. And honestly, it's a question that a lot of people have. I think one thing is just the amount of work out there for accountants. I mean, there's so many things to stay on top of, whether it's deadlines, changing law changes, people's tax returns, people's extensions, all these things coming up at once, really, and you having to be the one who knows it all, right? And so what comes from that is that people spread themselves over a wide variety of interests. And it's kind of that idea of the jack of all trades, but master of none. And we see that quite a bit in the accounting industry. Now, from my perspective, I think there's great value in finding someone who is solely focused on the industry that you're in. So we're talking to a real estate audience. I think there's great benefit to being paired up with a real estate advisor, real estate tax strategist who knows these things. And I was just on a call with a client yesterday, and he owns a cannabis business, but now he's also investing in real estate. And his approach was, with the cannabis business, there's not many people out there. It's a very niche area to be in. And he met the one accountant that is a specialist in that niche, and they've worked with them for 10 years and it's proved very profitable. And from the get-go, I was like, yes, I think that you should stay with your tax advisor on the cannabis business, because he knows a lot more than I do in that business. And that's going to save me and you money and time by just focusing on real estate together and your personal information together. So with real estate especially, there's a lot of accountants that you can come to with these things like cost segregation, and they might have heard of it. They might know that it works, but they might not know how to apply it and get all the benefits from it. And that's why it helps with the specialty. And we often point to like the medical industry, where you work with a surgeon or a general practitioner, right? The general practitioner, you'll come and you'll get your checkup. They'll tell you things that are going well and maybe a couple things to improve upon, and then you won't see them for another 12 months. But the surgeon is very specialized. If it's heart surgery, they're going to be able to go in and know all the workings of your heart and know what needs to be done. And you're going to trust them with something like an operation, whereas the general practitioner, you're going to trust with just your daily checkup. And that's the difference between tax prep and specialized tax planning, especially when it comes to the real estate world.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that really breaks it down. And I feel the same way. You have to be a specialist to really understand the intricacies of any one specific, detail. Like you mentioned, the cannabis, there are so many laws that, surround the tax laws specifically that surround the cannabis industry that you really need to know. Right. And oftentimes, it's on a state level also. And so you're going to be, dealing with state taxes differently from state to state, which is challenging. I mean, now you said you're in Minnesota now. I didn't even realize that. You mentioned that kind of in passing.
All right.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, have you had to deal with kind of the intrastate, tax filings and the differences between states?
Yes. And that's a big challenge for anybody. The good thing is that a lot of these states have similar rules, but they're certainly not all the same, right? Like, so I moved from California to Minnesota. The way California deals with things like renewable energy and the Tesla that you just bought is different than the way that Minnesota or even Texas deals with it. So, and Texas being a state with no income tax. So there definitely are things that you need to stay on top of, and it's important. And that's part of the reason that we don't work with anybody and everybody. We cap the number of people we work with, so we have time to sit down with people that are coming our way so that we know exactly what's going on and the implications on a federal and state level. I will say we do focus mainly on federal because that's where the big savings are. But
Sure.
yeah, it's not, you should not forsake the state level because yeah, there's some big consequences and also savings that can happen at the state level too.
100%. Yeah. It's a pitfall that I see some people fall into, which is, you're dealing with people who have, especially in California, for example, where there's like crazy, crazy state tax. I mean, the franchise tax board is notorious for just being like cutthroat in California.
Right.
And, you're going to be hit with certain things that you wouldn't even expect. Are there any other types of industries that you have had a foray into that you kind of are fascinated with as well, besides for real estate?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. We work with business owners because we know that a lot of business owners are also real estate investors. So just the idea of business itself is pretty remarkable. I actually did a podcast recently about like the 5 areas that the government incentivizes, and top 2 were business and real estate. Another one was technology, energy, and blanking on the 5th one. But really, the business and real estate together can be a powerful mode. I do like technology. It's complex, but the reason being that they incentivize it is because it allows you to improve society and make some of these advances. We see a lot of artificial intelligence and
Sure.
open AI and the way that ChatGPT is working, and the government will incentivize that. So it's just cool to stay on top of and take a look at and see how it works out in the future.
Yeah, and there are laws that are changing all the time, especially in the tax laws. There was a new
Right.
bill that was
Yeah.
proposed a couple of weeks ago that may have significant, differences in the tax code. So it's important to stay on top of those things. And I love what you said there about, the government kind of incentivizing certain industries over others. And that's really what the tax code is all about. And that's why real estate is so important. It's one of those industries that the government incentivizes for whatever reason. But, that's something you need to understand. That's what the tax code is all about, is trying to incentivize businesses by giving them tax breaks and tax cuts in order to, increase productivity, increase revenue, increase the economy, and contribute to
Definitely.
the economy. Well,
Yeah.
Chris, I want to transition. Well, go ahead. I'll let you, before we go to the final 4, maybe Edward can just cut that out.
I do like to just kind of nerd out sometimes, and I don't mean to go long-winded, but the reason behind the real estate is just because it's a production of housing. You're providing housing. So the government knows that Yonah Weiss, the real estate investor, is much better at providing housing than the government would be. And so they incentivize the real estate investor to go and do that through tax deductions. So I don't mean to go on, but I do. Like I said, it's crazy.
I always thought it was because Congress was full of real estate investors, and that's why.
Well, that too. Yep.
I mean, it does explain multifamily, but there's a lot of other type of commercial real estate out there that it doesn't explain so much. But Chris, I'd love to transition to what we call the final 4. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question to you is, what's the worst job you ever had?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was a janitor one summer. I worked in the public school systems during my summer of high school. I forget which one, but yeah, that one was the worst, I'll say. But it also provided me with a lot of insight into the necessity of a hard work ethic and just doing what you can to get ahead so that you aren't cleaning carpets the rest of your life.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes everyone's got to do that just to learn what you shouldn't be doing, I guess. Or beyond that.
Right.
Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I have to point to the Bible, and specifically the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. I think there is so much wisdom to be gained in the book of Proverbs, whether you're a business owner, a young man just getting started, somebody who's looking to find a wife. It's just about life's greatest form of wisdom compact in 31 chapters. So that's really changed the way I see life.
Unbelievable. Love it. Love it. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, written by the wisest of all men of all time, King Solomon was just beyond. And the fact that you're using that as a paradigm shift is just fascinating to me, because it's so true, because it totally changes the way that the Western world, the way we've been brought up a lot of times, the kind of practical wisdom that we've been given. A lot of it's based on the Bible, but Proverbs is like out there, and is really just like a lot of practical wisdom that if you
Right.
apply it and take it to heart, it can literally be life-changing and paradigm shifting. So, thanks for sharing that. And I usually say I'll put that in the show notes, but if anyone wants to check that out. But if you don't have a Bible in your house already, then I don't know if
Yeah.
that's awesome. And just to kind of reiterate there, reading it in the original Hebrew is even more profound if you understand the Hebrew, because it's multiple layers of wisdom, because every word actually has multiple meaning and can be understood in many different ways. So check that out. Yes. I'll just add there for any of my Jewish friends who actually have delved into that, the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, who he's called, has an incredible commentary on Proverbs, on Mishlei, that was, for me, life-changing. So just put that out there. But again, that has not been translated as far as I know. So I have to be in the original Hebrew.
Yeah.
Third question, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Oh, man, that's tough. I think it would have to be dancing. And my wife is big into dancing, and I'd like to maybe learn how to move my feet a little bit. And second to that would be singing in a much better tone, because I think her life would improve if I wasn't so tone deaf sometimes.
Oh, wow. That has so much meaning there. But, a singing, dancing accountant can be an added benefit there to your resume.
That's right.
Well, good for you, Chris. Finally, what does success mean to you?
It's a tough question. I mean, the Bible again says success is just meditating on his word day and night. So I think that's part of it. But I do think that going deeper than that, just being able to provide for my family and allow us to live, but also be generous and to take care of the widows and the orphans is really where my heart is to giving back. And Yona, honestly, that's one of the things I love about you is your generosity, whether it's somebody giving a review and you sending a t-shirt or just giving a shout out or just welcoming people onto your podcast. Like I see it in you, and it's something that I try to live out in my daily life.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's really what I aspire to as well. So that's in a lot of ways my definition of success as well. So I appreciate that, and awesome. Great to hear from you. Finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yes, great. I appreciate the offer. I think first and foremost, you can go to our website, betterbooksaccounting.co. And if you're interested in saving more on taxes, specifically in the real estate world, there is a form that we could have you fill out, or maybe even just a calendar link where you can talk to someone on our team. And then secondly would be LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm all over. Chris McCormack, CPA on Instagram, and then Chris McCormack, CPA on LinkedIn as well. So I would love to connect. I love meeting all these real estate investors and sharing some of these things that I've just been blessed to discover and learn about.
Very cool. And we will have you on our Wednesday meetup as well in the coming months. So excited to hear some more practical tax savings and tips over there. So grateful to you, Chris, for coming on the show. Thanks so much. It's really been a pleasure.
Same to you, Yona. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you guys once again for listening all the way to the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.